Hi, it's David, Art of David Smith again. So, as promised, we're going to draw a realistic skull this week. Now, obviously we're up in the level of complexity, excuse the squeaky seat, but obviously some of the things what we've been doing up to now have been leading us down this direction, so I feel obviously you're going to have the skills now to have a stab at this. And it all comes with practice, so don't worry if you fluff the first, second, third. The more you do it, the better you're going to get. So what I've got here is obviously a circle which, although a skull isn't a perfect circle, it's going to give us a good start. And then I've put in a couple of extra lines, so it's starting to look a bit like an ice cream cone, I guess. Now, basically, what we're going to be doing is the skull is pointing in this direction, so the eyes are going to be on this side. It's looking out slightly towards us, I suppose on a bit of a 45-degree angle, so that's just going to give you a rough idea. Now, if you remember from our other lesson right at the very beginning when we were drawing a realistic face, the eyes are going to approximately come halfway down this ice cream cone. So if I take a line across here, this is going to be roughly where the eyes are going to drop. I'm going to drop something in this. Now, what's going to throw you is obviously the differences between drawing a face straight on and then a skull on the angle. So what happens with this is we're going to start bringing into the equation perspective. Now, with your ice cream cone, if you roughly take just a little bit less than halfway, so half being the radius of the circle, I'm going to come down off that, down the centre, and we're going to put in roughly where the chin is going to go. Now, using perspective, obviously all these points go off to a point in the distance, and all these lines, if it was at the top, would all come together at a point way off in the distance. If you don't use perspective when you're doing something like this, it's going to really throw off the overall drawing. It's like when you look down the street, say a terrace of houses, the ones next to you obviously very large, but as you look down the street, obviously they're going smaller and smaller as they go along. So I'm going to roughly throw in our chin here. Now, obviously everything's not perfect shape, so once we've got this rough plan into here, we're then going to start putting in some more of the detail. So obviously with eyes, and again I'm going to go in a little bit darker than I normally would so that you can see this comfortably at home. We go in with the eye sockets, and what you really need when you're doing anything like this, and I've got off to the side here, is a little bit of reference, some skulls and things like that which I can draw upon, because obviously when you're drawing a skull it's very different to the face. Obviously the nose would come all the way down here, and you're not seeing that, you're just seeing obviously the bridge of the nose and the eye sockets and things like that. So by using my reference as a guide, I'm looking for all those points on the actual drawing. So I'm kind of roughly throwing in the eye sockets here, and obviously at the other side there's going to be an eye socket as well, but because of how the face is falling away, it's going to start dropping away. Now, because of the angle, this part of the eye socket actually starts picking up the bridge of the nose. So quickly throw a rough shape in here. Now what this is going to do by quickly running, I also apologise if you can hear the washing machine chugging away in the background, but us artists still have to wash our clothes as well. So we're going to work our way down to the jawline. So again, picking up the perspective, what we've got on the eyes, we're going to have to do that in regards to the jaw as well. So splitting this, roughly this distance between the eye and the chin, like we did in the original drawing, we're going to roughly throw in a jaw around this kind of area. Now obviously the jaws are round in shape, follows the jaw line, so it's going to kind of drop in and drop out of this line, but it's just going to give us a rough idea of where we need to throw in the teeth, the jaw, lower jaw and things like that. So obviously as we get around the eye socket, we've got around the side the socket of the eye. Now by doing drawings of skulls and skeletons and things like that, you start to get a real feel for how the body works. It's a great exercise, and by doing this you will improve your figure drawing. So when we move on to figure drawing, if you've done some studies of skeletons, how they move, how they bend, how the joints literally are constructed, you will take that through into your figure drawing with greater success, so that what you're doing is a lot more realistically. Now what we're saying about the jaw is, obviously a jaw isn't straight across, so it's kind of going to curve around. So this is like the top, I suppose, of the upper jaw, where the top teeth would be coming from. As we get around the edge, we're slowly going to start losing that perfect circular shape, because as I mentioned, the skull is not a perfect circle, so we're probably going to knock out, throw a few angles in there. It's going to loosely follow that shape, but we don't want it to be a perfect circle, so a little bit more angular. Obviously as we get down to the front of the head, we start picking up the forehead area, so that tends to be I suppose a flatter plane, but then you've got the top of the eyes, the sockets of the eyes. So just like we've got here with this bone construction, we're going to have a similar thing here. Obviously we don't see the full effect of that, but the eye is still encapsulated by that socketed area. So if you've got some reference material, pop it to the side. I was watching another YouTuber last night, and it was talking about fan art and things like that, but what he was saying, and what I definitely agree with, is when you first start out on your journey as an artist, you learn by copying others. All artists have done it, even the masters. They learnt from their tutors. Obviously the Grand Masters had very good tutors, but nowadays with our access to the internet and things like that, you can bring pictures up. So if you've got a particular love of anime, if you've got a particular love of Disney, as long as you're not trying to pass off those drawings as your own, you can use them as reference to improve yourself as an artist. That's how you learn to use paint, pencils for the first time. You look at the artists you're trying to copy and think, well, how did they do that? How did they get that texture with the paint? What brush were they using at the time they were doing it? So they're all It's all great lessons. So go on the internet, download some pictures of skulls, and it doesn't have to be a human skull, it could be an animal skull, something like a goat, or some of the cattle have got fantastic horns, and again a study of how those horns curl around and things like that is a great lesson, and you will get loads of skills from doing something like that. So get the pictures, get them printed out, and just draw them. I already said, the more you practice, the better you're going to get at this. There's the old saying about 10,000 hours of doing something, and it's true. Whatever profession you go into, whatever profession you do, they always say there's this 10,000 hours of learning before you become really, really proficient at something. And if you're doing this for pleasure, or drawing for school, just drawing as a hobby, you'll get there with those kind of hours. If you're doing a bit each day, my tutors always used to say you should always be carrying a sketchbook with you, because you never know when the opportunity is going to come for you to be able to draw something, especially figure drawing. That's great out in the park and stuff like that, watching people going about their day-to-day business, walking the dogs, feeding the ducks, those kind of things. It's great just to sit there with a sketch pad just drawing away, and again you will get a better feel for how the human body moves, how it bends, how it flexes. If you're out there and drawing from real life. So as you see, I've just thrown in this bottom jaw area. It's kind of still following this ice cream cone, but because of how we've got perspective working here, and the I suppose the angle we've got the actual face, the skull itself, you can start seeing it's looking slightly towards us. But it won't be until we start putting the shading into these areas that it will really start coming to life. So we're kind of just throwing in these things quite roughly still at the moment. So behind the eye socket, the skull tends to dip in quite dramatically. This jawline and things like the top jaw all kind of blends then into the actual main part of the skull itself. So over the eye line, we've got these brows into the forehead area. And if you do a few of these drawings and a few different skulls, you'll be able to see the differences between people. I mean, obviously the shape of the skull is what determines the look of somebody's overall face. So as you draw more and more of these skulls, you start to learn obviously how the features are formed and things like that. So keep on it. Now what we're going to have on this side is I'm going to pick up the other side of this jaw, or underneath the eyes, so the cheekbone area. Pull that into the side, and then as we move down to the teeth area, kind of that drawn out effect. So you'll see this on cartoons and stuff like that. So these slight ridges, what you have in that top jawline where the teeth actually sit. So again, using this centre, we're going to bring an imaginary line down, so our two front teeth are going to drop pretty much right in this front area here. So if we imagine this, so from the centre of the skull, if you imagine a centre line running all the way down here, comes to the nose, through the centre of the nose, pick it up again, down to the teeth, through the teeth, down. So that's like our centre line. So you know, so if it was a perfect set of teeth, that you're going to have your two front teeth right there at the beginning. Because of how perspective works, this one is going to seem like it's overlapping here slightly, but we're going to throw all these teeth into here. Just roughly, because we're going to come back, put them in greater detail, so we get to the molars at the back. Again, as we drop down, I'm going to pick up the lower molars. Because we've got these lines in here, we know roughly where they're all going to start to drop in. Pop those into there. Okay. So obviously, as we look through the jaw, we're then going to pick out certain details. So this would be the, I suppose, the lower base of the skull as it sits on the neck into the back here. But we're going to really darken these areas out, so you're not particularly going to see those. It's obviously just going to show that we've got those. Well, it's obviously hollow behind. So if I reach over here, just grab my pencils. Now, what we're going to do is, from this point, we're going to start picking out some more of the detail. So we're going to sharpen some of the lines. Certain little cracks and crevices and stuff like that. So put these kind of details into here. Start picking out all these elements. So we get closer to the edge. We start picking the light up again, so we don't want to take the shading right to the edge. So with the aid of our blending tool, which seems to have gone walkabout at the moment, there we go. Sweet. I can then take this really deep shade, soften it, bring it to the front of the nose area. So it's not as dark, so it really feels like it's a hole in front of the face. Darken those elements again. On the side of the cheekbone into the first of the eye sockets. So as I mentioned, we've kind of jumped in difficulty a little bit now, but it is the only way we learn. We can stick with the easy stuff all the time, but if we want to advance, and certainly if we're going to advance onto the next lesson, which is going to be the Day of the Dead makeup onto a real face, we need to be upping our game a little. So they're all exercises. If you are not feeling it at first, walk away, come back to it, go have a drink or something like that, and then have another go at it. The amount of times I have thrown a sketchbook across the room in frustration has my parents would testify to, is a great many times. So we all get frustrated at the beginning, I can assure you. But the secret is to just walk away from it, clear your head, clear your mind, go for a walk, anything like that, take your mind off it, and then come back at it. Because what you'll find is once you've done that, more often than not, things tend to go a little smoother and you just push on through. So again, I'm quite quickly, quite sketchily I suppose, throwing in some of the shade here in the really dark areas, as I then move to soften that, look out some of those pale bits. As I move to the front, I'm then going to lighten that because we start picking up the light source. So in our drawing we're assuming the light's coming from above. Now if you've got access to a skull, and I'm not being flippant with that, you can pick them up in all sorts of shops now, even artists, hobby shops, things like that have them, can be bought online. I'm not advocating a real one, I'm talking about one of the resin cast ones. What you can do with that then is set it on a surface where you're drawing in front, and you can play with the light. If you've got a lamp or a ceiling light, depending on how you place the skull, you can play with the lighting effects on your skull when you're shading them in. So because I'm using reference material, I'm having to assume the light in a similar manner to how the original picture was photographed. So blend out a little bit more of this. Just like to welcome all those people who've subscribed to my channel as well over the last week. There's been quite a upsurge in new viewers, which is really nice, fantastic. The word is slowly starting to get out there. If any of the new people have got any comments, anything that they would like me to go over, anything you'd like me to draw, by all means leave me a comment, and I will endeavour to answer the questions or even set aside a new video if there's something particularly you'd like me to cover. One of the ones I have been asked for is a drawing of a human hand, and again it's one of the exercises we often did when I was going through school, was to sit there and draw obviously the hand you're not using to draw with. So in my case, because I'm right-handed, I would sit there with my left hand in a pose which is obviously going to be comfortable for a while, and then would draw that. Again, it gives you extra insight into anatomy and things like that, and again it's a great skill to have when you start drawing, because hands and feet do tend to be one of the most difficult things for people to draw. I believe that is that is the reason why the Disney characters tend to have 3 fingers. They were difficult to draw at first. It always looks quite clustered when you draw all the fingers in place. So yeah, that's why they ended up with 3 fingers and a thumb. because I've gone on quite dark, you can actually see the dent from the circle what I drew earlier. So again, just putting in these darker areas. So obviously underneath the jaw line, looking through the hollow part of this, there's quite a dark area underneath there, so throw that in very, very dark. So again, because the light's coming down here on the cheekbone, we're going to pick up some more darker areas. Those are going to run down to the jaw. When we use the blending tool again, we can take this, which is quite scrappy at first, and soften the overall effect. Now again, as we were mentioning before when we were shading other things, because the light's coming down, there is a certain amount of light what bounces back up off the surface. Therefore, under here, although it's dark, there is going to be areas where it's still a little bit lighter than the really dark areas because of the light bouncing back up off the surface. Once you put those elements in, that's going to really help with the three-dimensional feel of the overall piece. So, rapidly throwing in some of these details. If it gets too noisy, this washing machine, I am going to have to pause until it finishes its spin, and then I will come back to finish the rest of the video, but we will plod on for the moment. Right, I think I'm going to leave that for the moment until this washing machine actually finishes its cycle, and then I will carry on to put in the rest of the shading area. But thanks for now, and see you at the other side of the video. Cheers. Okay, we're back. The washing machine has finally finished spinning. So as you can see, I've just started putting some of the shade into here. I'm using my scrap paper so I don't smudge any of this area which I've been working on, so it keeps all the paper nice and crisp and white underneath. Again, that is one of the big lessons, and that will dramatically improve your drawings. Just a bit of scrap paper, an old photocopy or anything like that, just use it to rest on rather than have your hand running over the top of it. All that ends up doing is mucking the page, and even crease the page as well, depending on how you're drawing, but it keeps that nice crisp white paper where you need it. No point trying to rub out after the event, just better just to use a scrap piece of paper. Again, I've mentioned about the gloves. Personally, I can't get on with them. It's like a glove what you put on to draw with. I just tend to find them a little bit tight and a little bit annoying after a while, so I just prefer to stick to the actual paper. So again, if I go in with a blending tool into this area, not only are we softening it, but we can start dragging some of the detail in with blending tool as well. So it's real subtle transitions then when you get to this kind of area, because a skull is a smooth object, so not wanting to have really defined lines when we get to this area. It's that transition between the dark into the light. Try and keep it nice and smooth. Again, as the jawline moves into the back of the skull, I want to keep that nice and smooth as well. So I am working quite quickly. Obviously what I'd advocate when you're doing this, take your time, get these areas in. I just want to show you the overall effect. Trying to get something like a finished drawing for you. I can finish it a little bit more off the camera and show you the final drawing at the end, but just wanted to show you a little bit more about putting the shading in and things like that. So again, underneath this area would be in some shadow because of the light coming down. Pick up part of the jaw. Obviously there's the shadow underneath the jaw, but we want to have, where we can, nice crisp line from which to work. So the light's coming down. I'm going to pick up a certain amount of shadow. Just use that amount. So what I do is pull some of this shadow out, so the actual skull actually looks like it's sat upon the surface. As it moves out, it obviously grows paler and paler, moves in darker and darker. So the front of the jaw. You want it to feel like it's actually sat on the surface. When it gets to the teeth, I have to spend lots of time kind of more implying. So where the teeth hit the gum area, obviously got a certain amount of receding which would happen. Pulls away from the gums, so make sure you pick those details up, possibly between some of the teeth as well, slight gapping. Put those areas in, these dark areas. You can see it really starts bringing out that jaw area as well now by putting in those details. Again, you can spend more time doing this, work into these areas a little bit more. Once you then hit this bottom jawline, just remember there will be, I suppose, like a bit of a shelf where the teeth sit, which would catch the light. So make sure you put that into your drawing as well. And as you move around the front, the dimple of the chin will be slightly darker again, as would the base of the chin. And with the blending tool, just soften that jaw a little bit more. Now what I'll do off camera is just pick out some more of the details, possibly around this forehead area, just pick up some of the light, just to really give you that overall 3D effect. and you can see what I do, obviously, by the end of the video. Now, as you'll agree, from what was a very simple ice cream cone shape, we've now been able to do this. Remember your perspective when you're putting them together. Remember that when you're drawing the skull, just like on our realistic face, centre of the eyes is going to fall in the centre of the skull again. Then it's going to split with the jawline. Again, remember your perspective when it comes to putting your teeth in. But then from there, play with it, experiment with it like I always say, and have fun with it, and try it a few different times, try it a few different skulls, but I'll say download them from the internet, or if you're lucky enough to be able to get one of the resin ones that you can have a play with, try the exercise for yourself. Feel free to post any results online for me to have a look at. Thank you for your likes, thank you for your subscribes. I'll catch you on the next video, and thank you very much and goodbye. Cheers.